Well, it's good to have all of you with us this weekend. I hope you're doing well in the holiday craziness. Want to, as always, say a big shout out not only to our Henderson location, but to our Summerlin family, our Sunrise Mountain and Southern Highlands family, to our Kingman family, to those who are joining us online, and those who are gathering in different prison facilities around the country in our partnership with God Behind Bars. Thank you guys for being with us. All right, how many of you like Christmas music? You like Christmas music? You're in? Like, how many of you tolerate Christmas music? How many of you really don't like Christmas music? It's okay. You're in church. You can be honest. It's all right. It's all good. Okay. Well, it's that time of year right now, and so I thought we'd start with a little Christmas music trivia. Which of these songs is the number one holiday song of the Billboard Holiday 100? Okay, we're going to test your knowledge. Is it All I Want for Christmas, Mariah Carey, Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree, Brenda Lee, or Mary Did You Know, Pentatonics? I'm hearing a lot of things. It's All I Want for Christmas Is You. That's the number one Christmas song right now. Now, you know what's fascinating? That song, it's a classic. It's been around a number of years. When you look at the top 100, somebody did some research on this, and this is fascinating. Of the top 100 Billboard holiday songs, only 8 of them deal with the birth of Christ directly. And of the 8 that deal with the birth of Christ directly, only 1 of them has the name Christ in it. So it just goes to remind you that even though this is a great time of year and we celebrate, we have fun, a lot of what we sing about is Santa and sleigh rides and fireplaces and being around people you love and eating great food, and I'm for all of those things. But let's not forget the real reason for the whole celebration is Jesus Christ. And whether he's in the songs playing on the radio or not, I want him to be the song playing in my heart. I want him to be the one that I'm looking to in the midst of the holiday busyness. Now, we've been basing this teaching series kind of loosely around songs off of our team's Christmas album, The Thrill of Hope. Last week, Sean gave a great message on the song, God Rest You Merry Gentlemen. I learned some things I'd never heard about that song. It was kind of fascinating. And this week, I want to look with you at a song that's on that Christmas album that's kind of anchored in Psalm 121. It's a song, I Lift My Eyes. Psalm 121 is all about lifting our eyes to God. And if I could give kind of one message as we go into the holiday season full steam, sort of one message as we walk into December, it would be simply this, that if you want to lift your spirits over the next couple weeks, lift your eyes to God. If you want to lift your spirits, lift your eyes to God. Look to him, and it will be a challenge to do that with everything pulling at us over the next couple weeks. It'll be a challenge to remember to do that with all the things that we need to accomplish between here and there. So let's check this out together. Psalm 121. This is a great psalm. You're going to be really glad you came to church. Are you already glad you came to church? All right. Well, by the end, you're going to be really glad you came to church because this is a great section of the Bible and this is an awesome psalm. So check it out. Psalm 121 verse 1. Help me out on the red words when we get there. He says, I lift my eyes to the mountains. Where does my help come from? My help comes from who? The Lord. My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. My help comes from the Lord. Listen, my help does not come from family coming in during the holiday season. My help does not come from getting the house ready and getting everything clean. My help does not come from pecan pie, although I love it. My help does not come from the Cowboys winning their 5th game in a row, even though I'm starting to believe it could happen. Listen, my help does not come because I get what I want under the tree. My help does not come because I get the gifts that I want. My help does not come because I hit the Black Friday sale. My help comes from the Lord, period. And so the psalmist is saying, we got to look up. You want to lift your spirits, lift your eyes to God. You're going to have to look past a lot of things. One thing you're going to have to look past is traffic. Hello, somebody. It's already crazy, and it's about to get even more crazy, right? I mean, you're going to have to look past long lines. A lot of that going on over the next couple weeks. You're going to have to look past impatient, frustrated people. You might have to look past the bottom line when you're trying to stay under budget. There's a lot of things we're going to be tempted to look at, but we've got to look past it and look to God. So first principle to have a meaningful holiday season is to just keep looking up. Just keep looking up. Jimmy Fallon asked people to tweet in some of their Christmas fail experiences, and people wrote in some great things. Here's a couple of them on Twitter. After opening presents, my sister walked up to my parents and said, "I'm not complaining, I'm just asking, is this it?" Christmas fail. Sounds a little bit like complaining to me. All right, I like this one. Last year, my dad had me wrap a coffee maker for my mom, and my mom had me wrap a coffee maker for my dad. I said nothing. This kid's like, we're just going to play this out, see where this goes, right? Christmas fail. Oh. Well, there's a lot going on when it comes to the holiday season. When we look out over the next few weeks, it can look a little bit like an uphill climb. And some of you may feel like you're in an uphill climb in this season in your life. And that's exactly the perspective that the psalmist is writing Psalm 121 from. He says, I lift my eyes to the mountains. And when we think about the mountains are like beautiful, right? Majestic. Most of the time, when we look at mountains, we're like, oh, check out that mountain. It's amazing, it's beautiful. But in the biblical era, in the biblical times, when people talked about mountains, it was often in reference to the fact that they were filled with dangers. Mountains, that was where the thieves hid. Mountains, that was where when you had to travel isolated roads, people could come out and mug you and rob you and beat you. In fact, the word travel actually comes from the word travails. So travel in the ancient world had a little bit of a different connotation than it often has for us today. We get frustrated, long lines and all that. We don't worry about people jumping out and taking everything we have. But when the psalmist says, I look to the mountains, he's actually saying, I look to my struggles. I look to the uphill journey. I look to the difficulties. I look to the hardships. I look to what's ahead of me. Where does my help come from? And he says, my help comes from the Lord. So he sees the struggle, but he looks beyond the struggle. Now here's why this is so cool. This is actually a psalm of ascent. And so the Psalms of Ascent in the Bible were psalms that were written for the pilgrims who were making pilgrimage to Jerusalem. And as they got close to the city, there's an 18-mile stretch where they would actually go up about 3,000 miles in elevation to get to the city. And as they're walking, they would sing these songs. The Psalms are a songbook. And so this is one of the Psalms of Ascent. So as they're climbing towards the city of Jerusalem, they're singing these songs. I lift my eyes to the mountain. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord. And it's uphill while they're singing, right? It's hard. It's elevation. Have you ever been in high elevation? It just messes you up, right? Like I remember a friend of mine had a house that they built up in the mountains, and they let us use it several years ago, and so we went up. We did a little couple-day retreat up there, and the elevation was so high. I had altitude sickness like the whole time. I've never burped so much in my entire life. Have you ever, when you're up that high, I just want burp, 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 burp. Everywhere I go, I couldn't figure out what was going on. I had this nonstop headache. I was weak. I was tired. I was exhausted. Everywhere I turned, I felt like, man, I don't know what's going on. And we were there 3 full days, and we finally talked to him on the phone, and I was like, thank you for letting us use your place. Yeah. I haven't really felt very good and all that. And they're like, oh, well, what you should have done is before you go up the mountain, you got to take some aspirin. If you take some aspirin, it'll sort of thin your blood out, and then you'll adjust to the elevation, and you would have had a great time. She told me this as we're leaving. We'd already cleaned the house up, everything. We're leaving. Good to know for next time, which there has never been. But that's elevation, right? If you're a runner or a biker and you've ever had to deal with elevation, man, once you get up there and the air gets thinner, everything starts to change. And so for us in our lives, sometimes we feel like we're walking at a high elevation. Sometimes it's hard to breathe. Sometimes it's hard to take steps, put one foot in front of the other. Sometimes it is uphill all the way. Who feels like they're walking uphill right now in their life? Who feels like they're just walking uphill? Well, here's what I want you to know today. You are not walking uphill alone. You are not walking uphill alone. Lift your eyes to the mountains. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord. He's my sustainer. He's my rock. He will help me. He will walk with me. He won't abandon me. I may be walking. I may be short of breath. I may be burping. I may have elevation sickness. It may be ugly, but I'm going to keep going one foot in front of the other because I have a God who's gone all the way to the cross for me. He's not going to give up on me. He's not going to abandon me. He's not going to check out on me. I lift my eyes to the mountains. That's where my help comes from. My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. Now look at this. Very next verse, Psalm 121, beginning in verse 3. He will not let your foot, what? Slip. He will not let your foot slip. He who watches over you will not slumber. That's good. Indeed, he who watches over Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. Now, there's a lot here, but I want you to lean in on this. First of all, he says he won't let your foot slip. If you're walking up a mountain and you're singing this song, then that is the smallest, most immediate concern you have, right? Right in front of you. You don't want your foot to slip. My wife's falling all the time. She slips all the time. She told me today, I fell coming down the stairs a couple days ago, and I didn't want to tell you. I'm like, you did what? She's always slipping, always falling. Thankfully, she was okay. But we slip. So the psalmist is saying, God will watch over the smallest detail of my life. He will not let my foot slip. Sometimes we think the things that we're facing are too small for God to worry about, right? You know, like, God doesn't really care about that in my life, or I can't really pray about this thing, or we hear the prayers of kids and sometimes dismiss them as, oh, those are just kids praying, kids' prayers. Listen, there's a biblical word for sort of the nature of God that theologians use to describe kind of who God is, and that is this tension between immanence and transcendence. Immanence means that God is in and through and around everything, and the psalmist is declaring, even the next step that I take, God cares about it. Even where I plant my foot, he'll help me get traction. God will walk with me in this moment. He cares about the little things. Next time you're tempted to think you can't pray for something in your life because it's too small, remember this. There's nothing too small for God. We often say nothing's too big for God. Hey, there's nothing too small for God either. And if God cares about the little things in our lives, then he cares about what's going on in the minutia. And the psalmist is saying, even though I walk, he won't let my foot slip. And then he goes on and he says, he talks about he will not sleep or slumber. Did you catch that? Now this is amazing. Think about sleep. Sleep is an amazing thing. Every night, you and I, or every day, depending on your work schedule, every night or day, you and I are out for 6, 8, some of you more like 10 or 11 hours a day. We're unconscious, we're helpless, we're not aware. If anything should drive home how finite we are, it's just sleep. I fall asleep everywhere. Any of you fall asleep anywhere? You know what I'm talking about? Like I'm one of those guys, except for at night when I need to go to sleep, that's another conversation. But sometimes I can just be like doing any old thing, right? You know, just sort of sitting there and Lori will look over and there he goes. Just sort of lay that chin down right there. That's good. I'm out. You know, wake up, wipe that slobber, everything's okay. Nobody saw that. I'm up, I'm back, and I'm a quick napper. Any quick nappers out there? We're a special breed, man. I only need like 3 minutes. If I can just like go out for 3 minutes, I'm good to go. I'm good to go all day long now. My wife's like, if it's not a 1 hour nap, she's not gonna talk to you when she gets up the rest of the day. It's like Grinch City. You know what I'm talking about? That grumpiness comes in, tired. We do, so and we get tired. How many of you wake up when you get up in the morning now? The older I get, this is more of a dynamic. You get up in the morning, you're like, I'm tired. You know what I'm talking about? Like I just woke up. What the heck is going on? I don't think I slept well. I don't think I ever sleep well. I've been saying to my wife, you think I got that sleep apnea stuff? She's like, what? I'm like, I don't know. I wake up. A friend of mine said that he had it, and then he started sleeping all night, didn't know he wasn't. Then he woke up and had all this energy. Just saying. How How many of you said recently to somebody, I'm tired? I'm tired. Turn to the person next to you and say, I'm tired. Tired. And turn back to that person and say, but God isn't tired. And listen, God can turn your tired into his triumph. God can turn your tired into his triumph. You think you're tired now? You're going to be tired in a couple weeks, right? We got a mountain ahead of us called Christmas. We got to climb, still to go. We got shopping to do, decorations to put up, travel plans to make, money we don't have to spend. We got stuff to do. And we're going to be tired at the end of it. We're going to be exhausted at the end of it if we're not already there. And the Bible says God does not slumber or sleep. I was thinking about this. I stayed in this really cheap hotel a few years ago, and I was sleeping, and I woke up after sleeping, and I had been bitten by a spider or something, like 5 or 6 times up my leg, on my shoulder, on my neck. I'm just telling you, that freaks you out. Because you're like, I was asleep, laying there, completely unaware, and this gross, I hate spiders, detestable creature climbed onto my body and then slowly went up my leg and systematically released its venom into my body, sucked my blood, did all this stuff, came all the way up on my chest, came up to my neck. He may, for all I know, he walked up around my eyes. He may have hung out in my nose. I don't know. Why? Because I'm asleep. And so the psalmist says we should give thanks because God never slumbers and he doesn't sleep. He's never caught unaware and he doesn't know. He's not weak and he doesn't need to rest. He is God and he's available. You can take him your prayers. You can take him your concerns. You can take him your stuff in your life. And you can believe that he's got it. In fact, I love the person who said, every night I say my prayers before I go to bed. God's going to be up all night anyway, so he can worry about it. And that's a great perspective for all of us in our lives. The psalmist not only says that God doesn't slumber or sleep, he says he watches over us. In fact, 6 different times in this psalm, we see the word watch or keep. God watches over you. God keeps you. God watches. He keeps you. So for weary travelers, climbing the mountain, it's a reminder that we're not alone. I don't know what your mountain is right now. For some of you, it may be a health mountain. For somebody, I saw an article online that something like, I can't remember, a fair amount of people, percentage of people are facing this Christmas and they still haven't paid off the credit card bill from last Christmas. That may feel like a mountain for you in your life. Some of you are going through the holidays after facing a loss, and that always feels like a mountain. I've lost both my father and my mother, and every time I get to the holidays, I think of them. There's always an ache there because I miss them, I love them, and so we'll all go through those emotions, and then I'll have these moments. You ever have these moments where especially us guys, we don't talk about this a lot. I wouldn't tell you privately, but I can tell you in front of a whole room full of people. But where you're just sort of walking around and some Christmas song or something comes on at the grocery store and I just start tearing up thinking about my dad or my mom, and I'm like, I'm just buying toothpaste. Weird. It's the holidays. And in the middle of it, we got to just keep looking up. Don't get distracted. Don't get off mission. Just keep looking up. All week, I've had a specific prayer request. I've started each day this week just spending some time in prayer, and really I'm praying through Colossians chapter 1. Colossians chapter 1, Paul the apostle prays for the people of the church of Colossians, and he asked that God would give them spiritual wisdom and understanding so that they will know exactly what his will is. So every day this week, I've been spending time every day. God, I pray that you give me spiritual wisdom and help me know exactly what your will is. And I've been praying for you, our church family. God, give our church family spiritual wisdom. Help them know exactly what your will is. I've been praying for our staff. God, give them spiritual wisdom so that they know exactly what your will is. And then give us the courage and the strength to do your will in our hearts and in our lives. But that kind of centering is powerful in the midst of all the distractions that go on in our lives. So keep looking up. Here's another thought for us, and that's to expect God's help. Expect his help in your life. So I don't know if you saw the football game this last week, but the Cowboys beat the Saints this last week. Now, the Saints are like an amazing team, and in every other game, they just look like the Saints, the Chiefs, and the Rams right now, I think, make everybody look like they're playing in a different sport altogether. You know, they're just playing at such a high level. The Cowboys have been horrible all year long. And I mean, they were so bad in preseason and so bad in the early games that I've had two emotions lately. One is, I just want them to lose every game right now so that we'll get a new coach and we'll start over and they'll just blow the whole thing up. I'm just saying, we've been a 500 team for 22 years. So just blow it all up, start over, right? But now they're winning, great. And they're not winning like good, they're just barely squeaking by some miracle of God. They pull it out and they just keep winning. So they won their fourth game in a row and they won against the Saints, one of the best teams in the league. And I watched the entire game and I did not expect us to win at all the entire game, even though we're ahead. All the way down to the 2-minute mark, the Saints get the ball back. I'm like, here it goes. We're going to do what we do. They're going to do what they do. They're going to drive down and score, and it'll be over. And I'll celebrate it because then that coach is gone and we can start over. But by some miracle of the Lord, the defense, again, comes to the rescue, makes an interception, and the Cowboys won. I want you to know I was miserable that whole game because I thought it doesn't matter what the score is, we're going to lose. And then we won, and my phone's lighting up, and I didn't know what to do. I'm like, But I learned something. This is what I learned. When you don't expect good things to come, it affects your experience in the now, right? When you don't expect things to go well, you have a hard time enjoying watching something that actually is going pretty well. When you don't have hope in your life, it's hard to live with a sense of expectation and joy moving forward. And the same is true on the climb as we go up the mountain, as we're going one foot in front of the other uphill in the midst of difficulties. We've got to expect God's help, rely on God's help, depend on God's help. And if you trust that He will show up and help you, not only will He help you, it'll change your experience on the climb. You'll enjoy it a lot more. You'll enjoy it. Doesn't mean you won't face difficulty. It says He'll keep us from harm. That word could be translated evil. That the Lord will keep us from evil in our lives. We may face difficulties, troubles, hardships, but He will ultimately deliver us from evil in our lives. Look at this psalm. Let's go on chapter 121, beginning in verse 5. Look at this. It says, the Lord watches over you. The Lord is your what? Shade at your right hand. The sun will not harm you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will keep you from all harm. He will watch over your life. The Lord will watch over your coming and going, both now and forevermore. Ah, it's rich. The Lord watches over you. He's your shade at your right hand. Some translations translate it this way. That phrase, right hand, means that God is beside you. He's the protector beside you. I don't know what you have beside you right now in your life. Some of you right now in your life, you got some haters beside you. Right? Some of you got some critics beside you. Some of you got some loud, unreasonable people beside you right now in your life. Some of you got some brokenness beside you. Some of you got some tension going on beside you. But you also have God who is beside you. If you want to get through this season with as much joy and hope as possible, you got to look past the challenges beside you and look to the God who is beside you. You got to lift your eyes to the mountains. Where does your help come from? My help comes from God. What you focus on will determine a lot of what you experience in your life. In fact, I would say the way you and I perceive our problems and our difficulties is more important than the actual problem and difficulty. Because when you see your problem and realize that God is bigger than your problem, that changes your whole perspective. And unless you move forward with hope in your life and expect God's help. Listen, don't go into this December and live with a perspective that just sort of assumes God's not going to show up in your life. That just assumes God's not going to help, assumes God's not going to do anything. No way, we're people of faith. We got to live with expectation. We got to wake up every day and believe and trust that God is going to show up and move and work in our lives. Why? Because he's watching over me. Because he's promised he'll be there for me. Because I'm not alone in my heart and in my life. I'm not going to face the holiday season like a non-believing person. I want to face the holiday season like a person of faith. And when you look at the Psalms, again and again, you see this trend. David and other psalmists, they talk about focusing on God, and they'll talk about their troubles and how significant their troubles are and how hard their troubles are and how overwhelmed they are by their troubles. But then in the very next psalm, if not in that psalm, they start talking about God. But this is the kind of language they use. I cry out to you day and night. I look to you in the morning and in the evening. I turn again and again. What does he say? I lift my eyes. See, where you look has a huge impact on how you experience the situation that you're in and that I'm in our lives. So he says that God's right there beside you at your right hand. Then he says the sun will not harm you. So the psalmist starts by saying, as we're going up the mountain of life, that he won't let your foot slip, a little thing. And then as he moves on, he goes all the way to the sun and to the moon. In other words, God will protect us in the little things. God will watch over us in the big things. He will be your shade. Now, that's a big deal. This is a desert climate that this is being written in. I understand what it's like to live in a desert climate, right? We understand how important shade is when it's 110 degrees outside. You ever pulled into a parking lot at a grocery store or something and you know, I don't know why, but all the grocery stores, all the stores, they have the smallest trees on earth. Have you ever noticed this? Like, we just don't have trees. These little trees, at least in the parking lots, you know, these little sticks coming up, right? But you see that little stick over there, and it's throwing like a little, like 1 foot of shade, and you see that shade, and you're in your car, and it's 190 degrees out, and you look up, and grandma looks up from across the parking lot, and she sees that tree and that little shade, and it's on. You got to get there, get that parking space, get that little bit of shade, even though you're like trying to get it up on your windshield, something, right? Just to get a little protection because it's so hot. I remember when I first moved to the desert, I was out driving my car one day and I heard this huge explosion. I mean, it scared me to death and I felt a wet substance all over the back of my head. Immediately, it was hot, it was wet. I thought somebody shot me. I mean, it was so loud, I just thought somebody just sniped me. You know, I'm just driving down the street and now I'm bleeding out. I'm looking at my hand. What happened is it got so hot, we left a Coke can in the back of our car and it exploded. That's not right. Things are not meant to live in this kind of an environment, right? It's hot. But the psalmist is saying, even in the heat, even when the heat's on, God is my shade. God will protect me. During the heat of the day and in the moon is shining at night, God will guide me. He will protect me. He watches over me. He keeps me. He takes care of me. The Lord will watch over your coming and going, both now and forevermore. So if it heats up, or if it's already heating up in your life, lift your eyes. If you want to lift your spirit, lift your eyes to God. You look to the mountains, yeah, that's majesty, but it's more than majesty. You're also looking at your problems, your struggles, the dangers ahead. And then you ask, where does my help come from? It doesn't come from the mountains. My help comes from the Lord. The Lord will show up and the Lord will move. And my prayer for our central family these next several weeks, my prayer for you every day this week has been that God will fill your lives with joy, with a greater spiritual understanding of the love that God has for you in your own individual life. That He'll give you spiritual wisdom in your work, in your homes, with your families, so that He'll help you know how to navigate life as you walk with Him. I want to share some scriptures with you, just some encouragement. Some of you may be facing some mountains And the next few weeks look a little bit scary. So if you feel like you're running ragged by all the demands and the expectations that you have of yourself or of others, take heart. Jesus says, take my yoke upon you, and I will give you rest. If you need energy and courage to deal with the situation ahead of you, Paul says in the Bible, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. If you need wisdom, James says, ask for wisdom and you will receive it. If you need guidance and are tired of going at it alone, Jesus says, I'm the good shepherd. I give up my life for my sheep. My sheep know my voice. If you're overwhelmed, Jesus says, fear not, for I have overcome the world. If you wonder how you're going to make ends meet this Christmas, Jesus says, don't worry about tomorrow, what you will eat or what you will wear. My Father knows you need these things. If you're struggling with your emotions this year, Jesus sends his Spirit to grow love, joy, peace in our hearts. His help is real. His help is available. His presence is available. After all, at Christmas, one of the names for Jesus we use is Emmanuel, which means God with us. He is with us. He's with us. He's with us whether his name is sung on the radio this time of year or not. He's with us whether in our culture we celebrate his presence with us or whether we choose to allow it to be buried in the busyness of everything else. He's with us. Lift your eyes. Where does your help come from? Your help comes from the Lord. You want to lift your spirits this holiday season? Lift your eyes to the Lord. Maybe you're here today and maybe you haven't crossed the line of faith. In fact, I believe some of you are hearing my voice right now and you've yet to cross that line of faith. And I want you to know I prayed for you today. I've already been asking God to pull on your heartstrings to help you make that commitment that you know you need to make. You know if God is calling you to come home to him. You know if he's moving and working in your heart and in your life. And I want to encourage you to just take that step and reach out and allow God to do a supernatural miracle in your life. The Bible says if you believe in Jesus Christ that he is Lord and you confess with your mouth that he is Lord, that you will be saved. You'll be forgiven from your past sins. You'll be restored in a relationship with God. You'll have his presence to guide you every day. And even though the walk may be uphill, you'll never have to make that walk alone. So if you'd like to become a follower of Jesus today, then I want to encourage you to repeat this simple prayer after me, just to open your heart to God and receive his love in your life today. Would all of you please bow your heads and close your eyes? If you'd like to become a Christian, you can begin that journey by repeating after me. Just say, dear God, I thank you for loving me. Thank you for sending Jesus into the world. I believe he died on the cross for my sins. I believe he rose again. Forgive me for my sins. Give me the gift of eternal life. Help me face the challenges that I'm up against. God, I surrender my life to you. In Christ's name. Friends, with every head bowed and every eye closed, if that's your prayer today, if it's your commitment, I want to ask you to just slip your hand in the air. Just to acknowledge you're going to follow God in your life. You're reaching out for him. Just slip your hand in the air. Wherever you're at, whatever location you may be at, if you're watching online, slip your hand in the air. God, I thank you today for these individuals who are coming home to you, who are expressing faith in you, who've placed their trust in you. And I pray you will honor that in every way. I pray you'll show up in their life and fill them with every good thing. And I thank you for the good things you do in all of our lives. We give you praise in Christ's name. Amen.